After many long years of hype, Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi is here at last. The first 3 episodes are already out, and we'll be discussing spoilers from all of them, especially the third, in this video. So be sure to go watch those episodes first. We'll be waiting for you when you get back.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Kenobi has given us another banger of an episode this week, and it came with the revelation that there are still allies of the Jedi left in the galaxy. This week, we got our first glimpse of part of an underground convoy for Jedi, which, we're told, leads to the planet Jabiim. If you're a veteran fan of the Clone Wars era, that name should be all too familiar. In Legends, Jabiim was the site of one of the war's bloodiest battles, a planet that carried a lot of bad memories for Obi-Wan Kenobi and for Anakin Skywalker. In this video, we're gonna recap the story of this blood-soaked battlefield. We know precious little about what Jabiim is going to be like in canon, but if Kenobi's portrayal of the planet is faithful to Legends, Jabiim will be a miserable, mud-covered world scoured by constant storms. Jabiim's storm clouds were ionized, causing constant interference that made repulsor lifts unreliable and severely complicated to travel to and from the surface. For all but a few hours of the Jabiimi year, the downpour was constant, churning up the muddy ground and eroding the planet's rocky coasts. All told, it sounds like a rather undesirable world, but Jabiim had one key trait that made it important. Beneath all that mud, the planet's crust was full of valuable ore. Roughly 100 million people lived on Jabiim, and most of them were miners. They joined the Republic 3,000 years before the Clone Wars and had experienced plenty of hardship. In Legends, the planet was ravaged by outbreaks of brain rot plague and raids from Trandoshan slavers and Lithian pirates, all while the Republic and the Jedi did nothing. Jabiim was an obscure world on the fringe of known space, and despite its Republic membership, the Republic didn't care about it at all. Or rather, they didn't until they learned about its mineral resources. It's curious that, in Kenobi, Jabiim is a sanctuary for Jedi. In Legends, nothing could have been further from the truth. Due to those millennia of hardship, most Jabiimi hated Jedi. Before the Clone Wars, no Jedi had ever come to Jabiim, and the average Jabiimi feared the Jedi, knowing little of them beyond exaggerated tales of their strange powers and seeming cruelty. By the Imperial era, however, the Jabiimi had become well acquainted with real Jedi, and in Legends, virtually all of Jabiim hated them with a passion. Let's go back to the beginning. Valuable ore was discovered on Jabiim around the start of the Clone Wars, and once it came to light, the Republic attempted to nationalize Jabiim's mines. This inspired outrage and a full-scale revolution on Jabiim. A separatist political faction called the Jabiimi Nationalists, led by local firebrand Alto Stratus, seized control of the government in a coup. They executed anyone in power that remained loyal to the Republic and declared Jabiim a member of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. A small faction of loyalists, led by Orlis Gilman, escaped the massacre, however, and they began a civil war with Stratus and his nationalists. The loyalists were at a serious disadvantage, however. Most of the population supported the nationalists. With little chance of independent success, they called for Republic intervention. The Republic responded by sending a huge invasion force led by nearly 30 Jedi and backed by brand new prototypical AT-ATs. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had recently led Republic forces to victory on Munilinst, was assigned overall command of the invasion. When the Republic landed on Jabiim, Kenobi and his men linked up with Captain Gilman and immediately began an offensive against the Jabiimi nationalists. For the first 2 weeks of the battle, things went well. The Republic captured around a dozen nationalist positions, as the Jabiimi had nothing that could withstand the sheer power of the AT-AT. But then things went sideways. Too late, Republic leadership realized that the nationalists had been stringing them out. Once Republic forces were overextended, Stratus and his elite commandos, the Nimbus, led an army of separatist droids in an assault on Shelter Base, the Republic headquarters. The attack was devastating, and Kenobi and his Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, barely arrived in time to prevent a total rout of Republic forces. The Republic managed to hold Shelter Base thanks to their help, but at great cost. During the battle, Obi-Wan was apparently killed when an AT-AT he was aboard exploded. In truth, he was taken from the wreckage by Asajj Ventress and brought off-world, but as far as Anakin and the rest of the Republic knew, he was dead. After Shelter Base, everything started to go wrong for the Republic. Several Jedi Generals took command of the battle after Kenobi's apparent death, only for each of them to be killed in action. One by one, every single knight and master on Jabiim was slain, leaving only a band of orphaned Padawans. The Padawan Pack. Republic casualties climbed high into the thousands and loyalist lines began to collapse. By day 38 of the battle, Republic forces had been all but swept from Jabiim by the vengeful Jabiimi nationalists, forced back to an evacuation point at Cobalt Station. At Cobalt Station, the Padawan Pack led the Republic's remaining troops in a last stand against Alto Stratus and his armies, holding out for 5 days in a brutal fight to the death. Ultimately, all but one of the Padawans perished, though one managed to take Stratus and the last of his Nimbus with her when she fell. The sole survivor of the Padawan Pack was Anakin Skywalker, who Supreme Chancellor Palpatine had personally ordered to leave the battle to command the evacuation. Skywalker wasn't in the best of states. He was still distraught from the apparent death of his master, and feeling his friends die in battle while he stayed behind didn't help matters at all. But the greatest cruelty came when the Republic evacuation ships finally broke through the clouds. The storms had cost the Republic several of their evacuation ships, and there weren't enough to evacuate everyone. Anakin had to choose between his clones and the Jabiimi loyalists. Believing that the clones were needed on other battlefields, Anakin chose to abandon the loyalists. As the Jabiimi hurled rocks and curses at the Republic transports, Anakin and his men left Jabiim behind, though not before young Skywalker learned, in an altercation with Captain Gilman, how to choke someone through the Force. The loyalists kept fighting after the Republic left. They had little choice. After the death of Alto Stratus, Thorn Crane became the leader of the Nationalists, and after his father's death, Nolan Gilman took command of the Loyalists. The Civil War continued, and the Loyalists were all but wiped out, driven into hiding in remote mines. Nonetheless, Jabiim was eventually captured by the Republic at the end of the Clone Wars, shortly before the Republic became the Empire. After the war's end, the Empire allied with the Nationalists, giving them concessions in exchange for ore, and the Loyalists became an early rebel group. In Legends, the Jabiimi Loyalists fought in isolation for 19 years, working separately from the Rebel Alliance. Shortly after the Battle of Yavin, the Alliance sent a task force to Jabiim to lend a hand, but they made the mistake of selecting Luke Skywalker to lead the mission. The name Skywalker didn't do the rebels any favors on Jabiim. Even though they desperately needed the help, the Loyalists refused to ally with the Alliance, unwilling to work with the Jedi or anyone who bore the name Skywalker. This ultimately doomed the Loyalist cause. Shortly after Skywalker's arrival, the Empire sent an army to Jabiim, which wiped out all but a few of the Loyalists and enslaved the entire planet. The Imperial Task Force was commanded by one Darth Vader, who was forced to confront some unpleasant memories upon his return to Jabiim. Haunted by the reminders of his past, Vader ordered a full-scale orbital bombardment of Jabiim despite the Empire's victory in the ground battle, all but cleansing the planet of sentient life. Of course, we don't know how much of this story in Kenobi will carry into canon. If canon Jabiim is a redoubt for Jedi, then perhaps the battle went much differently in this timeline, or perhaps Kenobi will build upon the existing story in new and interesting ways. Maybe we'll even get Clone Wars flashbacks. We'll find out what Kenobi does with Jabiim next. We're hoping that Kenobi stays faithful to Legends when it comes to Jabiim, but what do you think? Would you like to see the tale of Jabiim brought into canon? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.